of those days when I'm surprised they pay me. With me is Ferrari's ultimate street car, ever, the LaFerrari. Following in the lineage of the F40, the F50, the Enzo, they only do one of these about every 10 or 12 years. They're very special and very limited. And you don't just show up in Modena with $1.5 million check and take one home. You have to own some Ferraris, important ones at that. And then they may deign to sell you one of these. And when you do bring it home, you've got something more than the latest ultimate Ferrari. You've got the first one, in my estimation, to jump fully with both feet into the 21st century. This car is important. The styling of LaFerrari was actually done in-house at Ferrari, which is actually notable after 50, 60 some odd years of having Pininfarina pen almost all of their cars. But what's happening here is really interesting. There's not that much left for a stylist to do in the modern supercar era. The shape is determined by how the car functions in the wind. There are almost more holes and ports and cutouts than there is positive mass. What you're seeing here is a carbon fiber skin drawn tight over the least amount of guts the car has to have. And of course, this is Ferrari's first street hybrid. It's called HiKERS technology, Hybrid Kinetic Energy Recovery System. It actually dates back to 2009 in F1. It didn't take that many years for it to hit the street. When you've got something this pretty, you don't hide it, and they don't. Here's the heart of the beast, starting with a 6.3-liter naturally aspirated V12. Underneath this enormous carbon fiber plenum is some banned in F1 technology, variable length intake runners. It allows you to have the engine run perfectly at any RPM range by varying the run from intake to the cylinder, which doesn't want to always be the same, and in this car, it isn't. Then you get to the more modern stuff. This is the HPU, the hybrid power unit, which brings in power from the batteries and sends it on down to the electric motor right down there, bolted on the tail end of the transmission. Up here you see some of the orange cabling. That's a dead giveaway. This car is electrified. It leads up to batteries that live behind the two front seats, down and low, and they each live in their own little hermetically sealed refrigerators.
This electric apparatus weighs over 300 pounds, so it better earn its keep, and it does, contributing 163 horsepower to the massive combined 950 and the best 147 of the total 664 pound-feet of torque.
As a result of the electric componentry back here, the traditional engine up here doesn't need to worry quite so much about being a torque motor. It can do more with breathing and high RPM, hence redline is 9250, and the low-end stuff is brought in by the electrics. Where does it all go? Interestingly, and against current fashion, it goes to two wheels only in the back. While other supercars are going all-wheel drive, this one plants it in just two places through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, through one of Ferrari's outstanding F1 gearboxes. Now, in addition to using carbon fiber on the outside, you've got a clear message of carbon fiber on the inside, because this is a carbon fiber cabin tub. It only weighs 150 pounds, the actual shell I'm sitting in. Part of how they kept the weight down is keeping it small, as you can probably also see. By having these seats actually be immovable, they're just stationary benches, they were able to make the cabin smaller because you didn't have to leave room for the seat track to move back and forth. Instead, you adjust the wheel and the pedals. Back here is an LCD instrument panel, not their first, but in this case, it's changeable. It has different modes. That is a first for Ferrari. You've got a more traditional tack-centric look, and then you've got one that more speaks to the fact this is an electrified car, with a center roundel that has different indications of whether you're regenerating or expending electric power. Here's a real crowd pleaser, this sort of carbon fiber bat wing down here as your drive controls, reverse, automatic, and launch control. The last little trick is over here behind this door. Here's a USB slot that is different from the one for media and communications. This one holds a memory drive that's going to pick up recording of video from the forward-looking camera behind the mirror, and this one over here in this trick little carbon fiber pod that's watching the driver. It puts those two together and records them as you make your laps. Well, let's see, I'm on the track in the wet in a 900-plus horsepower car. Don't tell my life insurance agent. One of the first things you notice in this car is the fact that it doesn't present a huge amount of hybridness. There aren't a whole bunch of electric modes. There isn't that electric boost button like you have on a P1. This is a car that really buries the hybrid part, but buries it under the accelerator. It is, in fact, what you would call, technically, a mild parallel hybrid. But of course, there is nothing mild about the results.
Now, to mortals like us, all supercars feel the same in one respect. They are all much more than you can exploit. But what do I find distinctive about this car? It's really a joy to drive at your limits, invoking more grins and less sweat. And whether on the track or on the street, asking you sacrifice very little in terms of livability, all while making you feel like a superhero.
Okay, now when you're driving a car, and by the way, it's someone else's car that goes for about $8,000 an inch slice, you're glad for certain technologies that keep it under control. First of all, Ferrari's remarkable stability control. This lovely DCT transmission it's perfect. There's absolutely nothing about it in Tracker Street that I don't like. Big old carbon ceramic brakes are, of course, like driving a nail through this thing when you need it to. But you also get some nice braking through regen, going back into the motor. That's classic hybrid stuff. But also when the engine's got too much torque cooking, like when I come in this turn, it'll convert some of that into power back in. And as you can see all around this car, you've got active flaps and slots. And behind me, the most fascinating, giant, emerging wing in Autodome. Pricing a LaFerrari. Doesn't matter. It's about $1.5 million or so, and you can do endless personalization to take it where you want. The real story and conclusion here is that if you're lucky enough to own or just drive one of these, you've tapped into a lot of technologies and design ethic that are the future of Ferrari, but also a supercar that is a joy to drive, not just a hellacious hammer on the track. Few supercars can pull off that balancing act. This one does. More cars driven CNET style. Standing by now at cnetoncars.com. Click on the road.